senior experts from pretty much every country in the world as well with regard to competing for international opportunities. So hopefully during the course of this introductory session and during the course of the workshop thereafter, hopefully we'll be able to give you some insights and help you move forward. We're particularly grateful to the Goose team that we've been able to partner up with such amazing people with a great vision to help so many companies across Europe. And we're really looking forward to working with them and with your SMEs, your companies who are participating today to compete for these opportunities in these 6 new countries, I suppose, in terms of what the EU is trying to compete for. So that's me for the moment. Happy to speak to you all at some point during this morning, and I'll pass you back now to Dermot to take a look at the agenda for this morning's session.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. So what we're going to look at this morning, we've about 8 things to look at over the next 50 minutes, and we'll keep it going at a nice lively pace. We want to firstly look at cross-border bidding. What are some of the challenges that you're going to face? We're also going to look at the challenges of bidding internationally. We're going to look at the importance of case studies. This will be new to many of you, I'm sure. In other words, we're going to see how lots of buyers, instead of getting you to fill out a typical tender, they're going to ask you to not tell you how good you are, but they're going to ask you to show them how good you are. And so you're going to have to develop a new skill, which is that of writing case studies based on real problems that the bidder is going to, or that the buyer is going to give you and ask you how would you solve them. This can be a great way, by the way, for smaller businesses who are really good at what they do to show how good they are, even though you might not be a big or famous or well-known company. So see this as an opportunity, but you will have to pick up some new skills. Item 4 is a world-class methodology. We find repeatedly that one of the areas where we're very strong in help us trade when we tender for these international contracts is we're really good at writing methodologies. We might not be always the cheapest, and sometimes we're going to lose contracts on price, but it takes a while to master this skill. So if you're a business and you don't know how good or bad you are at writing methodologies, you need to make sure that you get feedback from buyers to tell you, is your methodology strong or is your methodology weak? It's so important to know, because often a lot of markets can be going for the methodology 25 to 30% often, typically. And so if you can write a good methodology, your bid can pull ahead of the rest. And often with weighted marking, where some bits of the tender are given, weighted marks with it carrying more weight, in other words, not just the numerical number that's given, that can really help your bid stand out from the crowd if you have a good methodology. Now, collaboration, point number 5, we're going to be looking at collaboration. This is absolutely key. We talk about collaboration in a few different ways. Collaboration in the sense of how do you put a bid team together? Often we see companies who have a great product or service, but they're hopeless at putting a bid team together, and so the outcome is always going to be poor. Collaboration can also have another meaning, which is that sometimes it's good to collaborate with a local partner. And in fact, in Goose project, if you look at the 6 countries that Goose is targeting, 2 in South America, 2 in Asia, 2 in Europe, if I was going to go into one of those markets, and I'm just thinking, I have not been in at least 3 of them, I definitely would look at having a local partner to go into the bid jointly with me, because that gives you local credibility. You won't be known in these other countries, perhaps, but with a local partner, you certainly will put your bid in a stronger position. So we're going to see this morning that one of the great things that Goose is going to help you with, it's going to help you find partners. And we're going to talk more about that later. Now, future advice, we're going to give you future advice as to how to become a winner. Okay, that's item 6. And then finally, we're going to just run through the specific things that Goose can do for you and why your company, your business, should stay involved with Goose for the next 2.5 years. I've been working as an external consultant with the Goose partners. They come from 4 different countries here in the EU, and I've been working with them, sitting where you are now, not on the side of the fence they are on, which is organising this partnership and all of these resources for you, but I've been looking at them critically, constructively, and along with Gary in Help Us Trade, we've been giving them feedback so that we ensure that the Goose project is going to give you things you actually need to penetrate new markets. And then finally, we're going to ask you to think, before the coffee, what can you do for Goose? And maybe we might even discuss that during the roundtables after the coffee break. Okay, Gary, I'll hand over to you now for the first slide.
Okay, so the challenges of bidding internationally. Okay, so some of you might have seen this information sort of historically, that's come out of the European Union in terms of the research that they've done. Myself and Professor Cahill have also done some quite extensive research on the challenges of bidding internationally, whether that's just bidding outside your immediate border. So for example, in the UK, that would be me bidding into Ireland, for example, or me bidding into France. And for some of you based in Spain, it might be just you bidding into Portugal or even up to France yourself. Or it could be just you bidding from where you are today over in the target countries that this project is bringing to you, such as places like Vietnam, for example. Okay. Now, the list that you see in front of you is in order of sort of the importance to your business. So wherever you're based and wherever you're watching this presentation from, one of the key challenges that you have in mind is obviously the geography and the location of business, or the location of that opportunity. So for example, one of the further countries away from us in this particular case would be the likes of Colombia and possibly the other direction, Japan. So for some of your companies, this may be a stretch too far. You may be thinking of both of those countries as an ideal market to enter, but obviously the geography and the location of those opportunities might be a little bit outside of your A, comfort zone, and B, reach. Okay, so this may already rule out those markets for you just because of their geography and location. Obviously, the closer they are, so for example, Norway might be one of the closer countries, obviously, for us. Again, the geography of that opportunity, again, might be within some of your company's reach. The purpose of this project is obviously to try and test that geographical boundaries in an age of COVID, and an age of where boundaries are becoming less and less in terms of offering certain types of products, goods and services. Obviously, the service market is one that can be now done remotely. So for example, Professor Cahill and I have spent the last 2.5 years, 3 years working for the World Bank in Asia. And yet we've never left our homes in the UK and Ireland, for example. So there are some opportunities you in this forum could actually compete for in these countries without ever leaving your desk in reality. So again, the Goose partnership will allow us to sort of test those boundaries. Obviously, where products need to be delivered, again, there's obviously has to be a sort of a tangible element to that, where things need to travel. People may need to travel, things may need to travel, and again, they may offer geographical and location boundaries. The second most important item, obviously, when bidding internationally, is looking at the language barriers. And again, bidding into those 2 countries that I mentioned, one east, one west from us, again, what are the language barriers? Now, some of you may have those languages, such as the sort of Spanish speaking in the room today may be comfortable in working in various parts of the world, maybe South America, in Africa, for example. You may have that language capability where you can work with those countries quite readily, for example. So again, they might not pose a particular problem for you. Obviously, going into the Japanese market might pose a much bigger problem for you. Obviously, I've traveled there myself, and I understand that, you know, it's obviously it's a new language. It's a very different culture for some of us, and it is a natural barrier. Now, obviously, some of you may have contacts in that country already, and if you don't, but that market interests you, again, this is where Goose is going to step in to try and help you moving forward.
And Gary, if I can just come in there, several of the Goose partners, okay, for example, Accio from Barcelona or Flanders Trade and Investment here in Belgium, they actually have offices around the world in the target countries that can actually help you to find good language resources, for example, or if you're going to meet buyers, to provide, to help you find a good business translator. But definitely for entering these markets we're talking about, for example, Japan is the most significant example where we know from research language is a huge barrier. Often the Japanese executives will not speak any other language, okay, and I include English in that often. So, and they definitely won't speak, for example, Spanish. So it's really important for you as part of your strategy to prepare maybe to hire somebody who is a Japanese speaker, either on a contract basis or to incorporate them into one of your staff. And can I just tell you that I found it very successful when I was hiring staff about 10 years ago, to hire staff, for example, when I was doing business in China and also in parts of Africa, to hire staff who had those language capabilities. It made my life much easier and it got me in the door faster everywhere. Thank you, Gary.
That's okay. Competition, obviously, from local and national bidders, regardless of the countries that we're bidding in, whether you're bidding into the UK or into Japan, it really makes no difference. There's obviously going to be local and national bidders competing against you for that work. This is common to all our bidding lives, I suppose. One of the things that I'm hoping will come out of Goose and come out of the people that joined this forum today is that collaborative mindset, because without that collaborative mindset, you're not going to overcome the competition from those local and national bidders. Hopefully you will have an innovative idea, an innovative product or a service that you believe is better than what is being offered locally and nationally. And one of the key things that we'll be trying again to support you is enter those markets with those new innovative ideas. This is obviously the purpose of the Goose funding, because the EU wants us to spread our wealth of knowledge and intellectual property to these sort of far-reaching countries, the ones that's being targeted by Goose.
And again, Gary, if I can just come in there, one of the great things that Goose can do through its extensive international partner offices network is when, for example, trips are organized for European companies to go and meet, for example, public buyers in the 6 target markets, intelligence will be provided as to who are the competitors for various products or services that are locally based. So, for example, if you were a green economy company, and I know from talking to the EU-Japan office recently, there's a huge program coming up now in green economy goods and services and infrastructure in Japan, for example. Well, you need to know who your competition is. And so the local office can provide that intelligence in advance of a trip, because you need to know who you're dealing with, who you're competing with, how competitive are they, etc. And one of the things we've also learned is that it's so important to meet the buyer in the foreign market, because often they may be drafting contract and tender specifications, technical specifications for goods or services that are just based on local specifications. And this will give you the opportunity to show the buyer that there are other goods and services, but they're based on different technical specifications out there. And so this is why it's so important to get to know your market, and Goose's network can help you, the SME, with that approach. Now, will I take the next one, Gary, the legal requirements?
Yeah, that would be good, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is just related there to what I was talking about in number 3, the legal requirements. Just because you have a good product or service doesn't mean that other people want to go and buy it, because there are lots of trade and non-trade barriers. So, for example, if the EU was a free trade agreement with a country, it's much easier. A lot of the trade barriers would have been removed, but there also can be non-trade barriers, or what we call non-tariff barriers, such as, for example, the point I've just made, there are different specifications, technical specifications for goods or services, etc. So you really do need to make yourself familiar with the legal requirements in this one of the 6 markets that you wish to target. And this is another way that Goose can help you, because right now the Goose team are producing very, very useful and detailed fact sheets on each of the 6 countries. I've seen early drafts of them. They really are a fantastic resource, and they will include information, for example, about the legal system in the country that you're going into, who is the procurement regulator in the country that you're going into, but it will also include other relevant legal requirements information. For example, do you need to set up an office in the country if you want to do business there? Do you need licenses to operate? That kind of information is absolutely invaluable. And Goose will be producing very insightful fact sheets. There will be short 2 or 3 page summaries with just very hard, quick information, and then there will be more detailed information available as well. And I'll be encouraging you to go and follow the Goose web portal in the coming weeks, where you will see these fact sheets appearing about each of the 6 markets. So that's what I would encourage all companies to do. Gary.
So number 5 and number 6 we'll address together. So the lack of experience of doing business abroad. Again, some of you in this room may be completely familiar with competing internationally and delivering those projects internationally. And again, Goose reaches out to you in terms of, hey, you guys come into the Goose partnership, because we'd like to work with you, because maybe you are the leaders that we're looking to work with, so that we can help build these partnerships possibly around you. For those businesses in the room who have less experience of competing abroad, and then again, we reach an arm out to you guys and say, hey, can you come on board as well to help us build up these collaborative machines or vehicles, if you like, in order for us to compete for these international opportunities. So don't think that you, just because you're entering this room with no experience and you're trying to find out more, you are not of benefit to this partnership. We are trying to build collaborative ventures in order to compete for these international opportunities. Those who have, as I said, who have that experience, again, our challenge to you is to make yourself known, that you have this experience in these countries, and that you're willing to be a partner or a lead partner to lead these initiatives. Dermot and I have been leading these for quite a few years for a lot of companies now. And again, we know the challenges of being a leader, but at the same time, we also know the rewards of being the leader. So again, it's a reaching hand out to you. Item 6, resources necessary to compete internationally. Well, I'm hoping you're here today in order to find out what resources Goose can provide to you. I'm aware that there are other projects that the EU are funding with, again, similar sort of offerings, but again, Goose's offering is quite unique in terms of what they're trying to give you in order to compete for these opportunities internationally. In terms of item 7, risk related to project contract cost and currency, obviously by competing in these countries, they're all using their particular type of currency, and there are costs of doing business in those markets. Again, this was item 7 on the most important items when challenges of competing for cross-border opportunities. So we know obviously currency in terms of large contracts can fluctuate quite significantly, and this needs to be built into the risk factor of those companies, again, competing for these contracts in these other countries. So just something to bear in mind with regards to sort of the money, the financial side of winning these projects, and having an appropriate risk management system in place. Again, any more information on that, happy to provide you. The last point is is just saying to you, well, yes, there are differences in these countries in terms of the way they operate. And again, we've noticed a few in our careers in terms of how these countries do operate outside of the EU. But actually, we're saying here there's differences in strategies, systems, and procedures, and so on and so forth. But actually, when you come down to the competing and the bidding process, a lot of them actually share quite a lot of consistency as well. They do similar things. So, for example, when competing for World Bank opportunities, an international funded institution, a lot of the opportunities that come out of the World Bank follow a very similar format. Okay, so again, if you're competing for these type of opportunities, and these are the ones that interest you and gain you access into sort of developing countries more than anything else, again, their systems and procedures are actually quite similar, and same can be said for the other financial institutions such as the EBRD, the EIB, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the list that you're seeing in front of you now is based, as I said, on a ranking system. So companies have told us, or told the European Union, the most difficult point of entry into an international market is geography and location of business. With Goose, we're hoping that that becomes less of an issue. So one of the reasons why you're all here today. Dermot, over to you.
Okay, so challenges of bidding internationally. Let's just continue in this theme now. And this is hard information, and this will be new to some of you, and to others it may not be so new, but I want you to do it even better. And so the first one there is, have you got references from previous clients? So this is something that you may not be used to when you're bidding in your own country here in Europe, because many countries in Europe don't need references from previous clients. That is like a testimonial that says how good you were on a previous contract. These can often be absolutely essential when you're bidding for contracts outside the European Union. So what is a reference? Goose is going to, on its web portal, set out the essential ingredients for what should be a good client reference, or what we call a testimonial. So this is basically a document which you should be gathering from all of your clients for whom you have done work in the recent past. Ideally, going forward now into the future, what you should be doing is, you should be, whenever you finish a job for a client, you should ask them to write you a detailed reference. What we also call, I'll just use the phrase again, testimonial, they mean the same thing. And what that does is, that actually is where the client says what you did, what the value of the work was, when did you start the work, when did you finish the work, what did you do, did you supply products or services, did you come in on budget, did you deliver on time and according to specification, was the client happy with your work, were you easy to work with, and so on and so on. Did you bring innovation in your delivery of goods or services or infrastructure for the client? Now that's a pretty detailed letter. What I've described to you there is at least 2 pages long, this client reference letter. And what Goose will do, Goose is not going to write that letter for you, but what it's going to do is it's going to have a resource on its web portal that tells you all the key elements that a great project reference should have. And you then can build a letter around that, which you can give to your clients. And can I just tell you, the best time to get this letter is the day you finish the contract and everybody's happy and smiling. Often when you go back to companies for a reference about a piece of work you did a few years ago, it's impossible to get the reference because life has moved on. The person you were dealing with in the client has actually left and is working now somewhere else, and you can't track them down. So always get these references and put them into a file where you have them to pull out for every bid, because these are very important. And the very first time that we, as a company ourselves, found out about this requirement, it totally stumped us. We were coming up to a bid submission deadline. We had not got our references in order, and so our bid was weakened as a result. But we soon learned, and the Goose portal will help you how to construct a good reference. Second point is, are you familiar with the legal and regulatory system in your target country? The reason why I'm putting that up there is because we're now seeing increasingly in bids that are coming out that often they want you to be familiar with the economic and legal and regulatory landscape in a country. You need to put a few paragraphs into your bid on this. And again, the Goose fact sheets will be extremely helpful to speed up that process for you, because they will have a lot of useful information in this area. Thirdly, now this is really important, do you expect tender award decisions to be made quickly? Now, you know the way that buyers always say, you will have your bid in on the 10th of November and we will make a decision by the 17th of November. And of course, as we know, they never do. they make you stick to deadlines, but they don't always stick to their own deadlines. But they do make the decision within a reasonably prompt period, generally. Well, when you're bidding in some of the target countries that we're looking at, for example, Japan, or we're also mentioning Vietnam, for example, we do know from Goose research that's already been conducted for putting the fact sheets together that often it can take a long time to go from bid submission deadline to bid award decision. So you must be able to accept that award decisions of contracts are not going to be quick in markets outside the EU. Things happen at a much different pace, and so you've got to be resilient and you've got to be prepared. By getting involved with the Goose project and using its useful resources, you must also be realistic. You're not going to have quick wins or quick contracts awarded. Often you might be talking about a 1 or 2 year timeline, so you've got to be prepared to wait and to plan ahead. Are you able to write a case study? Are you able to write a case study? Now, I've mentioned this earlier. So what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is, first it was just 1 or 2 examples, but now it's becoming more widespread. Buyers have realized that some people, especially bigger companies who have more resources, are very good at writing bids because they employ people to do this all the time, often on a full-time basis. And then what buyers discover is that the product or service that they get from that supplier doesn't always seem as good as how they presented it in the bid. And often buyers are finding that the company they awarded the contract to, while it looked very good on paper and maybe have given a very good price, it actually wasn't great at the actual performance of the contract because it didn't understand technically the area that the company was involved or that the buyer needed a product or service for, or infrastructure. So what they've increasingly started doing is asking you to actually address a problem, and they will give you a hypothetical problem, which often can be based on their area of business, the buyer, and the buyer is asking you to come up with a solution. Often the case study will be maybe 1 to 2 pages maximum in length, but it's saying, if we asked you to deal with this problem or solve this problem for us, it could be a technical solution that they're looking for, let's say in the IT area or in the smart health area. Are you able to solve this problem for us? And so the case study is a great opportunity for you to show how expert you are in your area. However, you're going to have to learn how to write a case study so that it achieves the desired objective. And so as a result, I would be referring you to a great new resource that's going to be on the Goose website shortly, that's going to tell you what are the essential elements of a good case study. And recently, our company, Help Us Trade, was ranked number 1 on a European Investment Bank framework, where we're going to be doing procurement auditing around the European Union and also outside the European Union, because that organization, the EIB, funds projects all around the world. And we had to write case studies. There were 3, I think, we had to write for that contract, and they were very varied. One of them was in the digital infrastructure area, for example, but we were ready for it because we had done it before. So I would urge you to look to the Goose website. It'll tell you what are the key elements, and it'll probably, I'm sure that the Goose partners will put up some case studies there that have been adjudged in former bids to have been of very high quality, so you see what a case study looks like. Now, fifthly, before I hand over to Gary, how good are you at writing a bid-winning methodology? So what is a bid-winning methodology? This is the part of the tender, and this is where smaller companies typically lose marks, okay? So there are 2 or 3 areas of every tender where, because I've also been doing a lot of publication based on research in this area, from talking to companies in various European projects over the years, including with Accio, one of your partners here in Goose today. And we find that all around Europe, companies lose marks in the bid methodology section, which describes how you will perform the contract, and in the risk management section, In other words, what happens if a key person, a key engineer, or a key manager, or a key scientist, or a key salesperson leaves your company or becomes ill, for example? Who's going to cover them? So I'm not going to talk about risk now, but I'm just telling you these are the two areas in particular where smaller businesses lose vital marks when they're writing their bids. But if I just return to the topic of the bid winning methodology, one of the great things that the Goose website will be able to do for you is it will be able to show you some examples of what good bid writing methodologies actually look like. And you'll see they take quite a lot of work. But once you master the skill of writing a good bid writing methodology, you'll be able to do it again and again in future contracts because they follow a certain order, and it's a skill that you need to learn. Gary, I'll turn over to you now for feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Dermot. So I won't go through every point from 6 to 10, but I will pick up on point 6, point 8, and point 10. Okay, so point 6 says, are you prepared to seek feedback when or if you are not selected? To use there, sorry about that. So again, a really important item when bidding for public opportunities is that you make sure that you seek feedback on all the opportunities, whether you win or you lose. Based on our experience, not a lot of people actually ask for this feedback, and when they do get it, it's not typically very good either. So again, if we work as a community to try and get this feedback from buyers, then I'm hoping it will improve their feedback and the content given in that feedback. Either way, whether the content is good or bad, getting feedback will help you improve your bid in the future. So please bear that in mind. As I said, whether you win or lose, we systematically ask for feedback from the public buyer, even when we win. We want to know why we won, how we won, what were the margins between us and the second place person, what did we do better than the second place person, because we want to know what is going to keep us ahead of the game. What innovative things have we said that is better than everyone else in that market? And again, this is just a tip that we need to pass on to you to make sure that you are ahead of the game in terms of working with Goose on these projects. Item 8, so prepare to travel to your target market country, I suppose, in this case. Again, COVID has put a bit of a dampener on our ability to travel. In one way, that is obviously reaps benefits, obviously, to the climate more than anything else. But on another side of things, it's meeting of people. I'm a great believer in meeting of people. And I think to some degree, hopefully it will return to some degree, as I said, but getting to those markets is obviously key in order to establish good relationships with people beyond our current sort of borders, if you like, in this case. So raising your profile is one of the key things Goose recognizes as being part of your ability to compete internationally. So again, through Goose, through the partnership, you'll have that opportunity to meet those international partners if these countries that are being on offer are of interest to you today. Item 10, are you prepared to lose before you win? Okay, so again, Dermot and my career, we have had many losses. We're not standing in front of you today saying we've won everything. We have not. We know what we're good at and we know what we're not good at. Occasionally we're a bit cheeky and we try and compete for things that we're not really the best at, but we hopefully put a partnership together to allow us to compete for that. We have lost a lot, but we have sought feedback at every single stage to make sure that we didn't have that losing trend. And again, in the more recent history, our winning ratio has increased significantly because we were able to listen to that feedback, and we've been more strategic in the way that we target certain countries. And again, two things that we hope to help you as part of the Goose moving forward. Okay, moving on to sort of case studies. Again, I'll lead this particular slide and then I'll invite Dermot to offer his thoughts on this one. So as Dermot has already mentioned, case studies is becoming more and more of a trend within public procurement. People want you not to just tell them, sorry, when I say people, the public buyer wants you to show them what you do and not just tell them. As he said, getting a support writer in is great because they can tell you certain things, but actually a company can only show you what they've done through a very good case study. Now, again, when we're competing for these opportunities, we will spend a large amount of time working on our case studies that we would like to explain to the public buyer about what we've done, how we've done it, and answering all the questions that you have on screen there, and also our methodology, which I'll come to in a second. What you're seeing on screen there is basically the structure of a case study that we would put together. We would be very systematic in presenting the client's details. We would have an overview of the project and what we did as part of that project in terms of our responsibilities. We would clearly show the project size and value in monetary value, and also maybe the outputs that we've developed as part of the project. We would clearly define what we did as a team for the client, and where required, possibly myself, what responsibilities did Gary Clifford have? What responsibilities did Dermot Cahill have? So that, again, when we compete for the next opportunity, they know what our strengths and weaknesses are. Who is responsible for the project success? Obviously, this is us in most cases, because, again, we're trying to sell them our benefits. Did we have any problems in the contract? And again, we're quite open in the way that we tell people about, yes, we did have a problem. However, we rectified that problem very early by doing the following. Okay, so we're quite open in that, because we'd rather explain to our client what we did in order to solve a problem, which again seems to have gone down well in our world of competing for these service type contracts, because they recognize that we are proactive in our approach to dealing with problems. Obviously, G is a key item for these public buyers. They want things on time and to budget. And we have to show that we've done that consistently over the course of our careers. And finally, the client testimonial. This is slightly different from a reference, but again, if you can get a quote from a previous client to explain how happy you are. So, for example, Dermot and I are in the throes at the moment of gathering a testimonial from a company that we helped in northern Spain just recently, who was awarded a framework contract within the European Union. So, again, a client testimonial will come from this company to explain how good or well, we were good in this case in terms of helping them win that particular opportunity. Okay, so
Gary,
Dermot, anything to add there?
Yeah, just before you leave that slide. So as you can see for the audience, it takes quite a bit of effort to write a good case study. So it also takes effort to get a client testimonial. But if your client testimonial was gathered from previous projects, you already have it in your files, H is already done. You don't need to do H, you just put it into now your new tender bid submission. So it's all so important to have those client testimonials ready. If we go back to the case study, E, who was responsible for the previous success, or who would be? You could be describing a past contract where you faced a similar issue, or you provided a similar product or service to the one that's now being sought by the buyer. And you should be naming who in your company was working with that past client, but also you should be showing who's going to be dealing, ideally the same person, with the new buyer should you be awarded the contract. So you're showing continuity of personnel. So it's always very good to name personnel. That is, if that's what they want you to do. Contract delivery problems in F that Gary has mentioned. Often we don't like to admit we had problems in the past, but if you can show how you solved them or how you would solve them if they arose, then that's really going to impress the buyer as well. Okay, so it shows that you're, like Gary said, you're proactive. You anticipate that there may be some difficulties along the way in the contract. Sometimes they're unforeseen. They just arise. We never expected them, but you have a way to manage them and deal with them. So this is so important when you're writing a good case study. And as you'll see as well, it's very important that you show what your team can do for the client. That's item number D there. And that's why it's really useful to actually name your key personnel in your bid and identify them. And on the matter of CVs, which I just mentioned briefly, all your CVs for your key personnel who are going to be involved if you win the contract, they should all be in a standard format. I recommend a CV is no more than 1 to 2 pages of just relevant information, relevant to the bid that you're buying. Okay, Gary, next slide. Now, this is the methodology slide. It's titled Stand by Your Methodology. So it's the most intensive part of writing a tender, a bid, is detailing your methodology. In short, from day 1 to day 100, how am I going to perform the contract? This is where you communicate your knowledge of things like process. You'll be indicating in the methodology how you'll be reporting to the client at frequent intervals. And it's also your opportunity to show the client that you are familiar with the terrain that you are entering. So if you can, for example, know who the relevant stakeholders are that need to be involved, and you mention who they are, then that obviously shows you know what you're doing. Now, in some of these new markets you're entering into, if you're only entering for the first time, you won't know who the stakeholders are, and that's where the fact sheets can come into great assistance for you. They can be of great assistance to you.
Just a quick one. I'm just going to show the next slide on screen, okay? I'll leave you talk. I'm just going to pop out for 60 seconds, and I'll be back in 60 seconds. So I'll show the next slide, and you keep going, and I'll be back in a second, okay?
That's great. That's great. Okay, so if we look at this slide here, this is what a good methodology should do. A is the most important. How will you carry out the work? How will you carry out the work from day 1 to, let's say, day 100? How many weeks is each stage, let's say, of the product development or product innovation that you're going to do for the buyer? How long is it going to take? And what will your level of interaction be with the client? Will it be daily, weekly, monthly? And how will you have project milestones? How will you show that you're making progress during the course of the contract? For example, if it's in goods, are you going to meet certain delivery deadlines? Okay, so how you will carry out the work for the client is really describing the entire methodology, and that has to be very focused and very detailed. Now, second point, what manufacturing, service, or goods delivery processes will your team follow to deliver the project? So is there a particular quality standard that you're going to have to follow, some internationally recognized standard? Is it going to be a standard that's recognized in the country that you want to win the contract in? Do you need to become familiar with their standard, even for a start, knowing its name and describing it correctly? So you'll then have to go a step further and show how maybe the quality standard that you follow, let's say here in Europe, is equivalent or better maybe than their quality standard, if there is one. If it's a goods delivery process, what's the schedule for delivery? And how will you ensure that any delays or interruptions to delivery are mitigated? How are you going to mitigate risk? Okay, if it's a manufacturing process, what is the process? You're going to describe it in detail in the methodology. This shows that you are a real expert provider of those goods or services. Now, in your methodology, you can also refer to case studies to show that you have done this work before. So the case studies don't go into the methodology as such, unless the buyer asks you to put them in there. They will be usually in a separate section of the document. And so you'll just cross-refer to them to show how you have carried out a particular process or service previously. A picture speaks 1,000 words. That's point D. So use a Gantt chart to show how different project delivery timelines and what we call stage gates will be met. A stage gate is basically a milestone, okay? So for example, if we're producing something, the first milestone might be the completion of research into the product. The second milestone might be producing a test model or a prototype. The third stage might be producing what we might call an actual version of the product. So these are the key stage gates or milestone, and you can use a Gantt chart to actually illustrate this. It actually shows that you're highly organized, and it will describe each stage of the work in kind of very brief headed detail, but it's the colored bars in the Gantt chart will show how the project proceeds in stages towards the completion finish line. And you have to specify key communication milestones where you're going to interact with the client, okay? So key milestones where you're going to interact with the client are so important, because now this is something that will come as new to you if you are not used to dealing with public buyers already. And what we found in our experience is that public buyers behave very differently to private buyers in many ways, okay? So firstly, there's a whole set of rules and regulations they have to follow, which are the procurement rules of their country, for example, or if it's in the European Union, you have to follow the procurement rules as well of the European Union. But there's another characteristic of public buyers that you might not want to pay much attention to, but which is extremely important because it's important for them. And that is, they like to have regular interaction with whoever is providing them with the goods or services. And frankly, sometimes it can be a bit annoying, because often what they're trying to do is impose another layer of reporting bureaucracy on you. And often what they're also trying to do is to squeeze more out of you at different points in the contract when you're in the middle of trying to deliver what you contracted to deliver for them. So you just have to accept this is a reality. The public buyer as well is going to be someone who may not have much commercial experience of doing business, unlike you, but they still want to feel like they're in control. So you have to show regular meetings or reporting, you know, I suppose in this case it'll be Zoom calls with your client to show that you are keeping up regular communication with them during the course of the contract delivery. Okay, Gary. And you're on mute. Gary, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I am indeed. Yeah, I've just unmuted. So the title of this slide is Working Together is Success. Now, it means working together within your organization, okay, not collaboratively, as we've been talking about thus far. And again, this is just a few tips that we've learned along the way as we've been doing things. And this is something that you should be thinking about from today. If you're not doing this already as an SME, whether you're competing for things as local to you or national or indeed international, then these are just a few items that you should be doing right now, today, when you leave this session. If you learn nothing else from what we're talking about you this morning, these are things that you need to do. They're very simple things, and these are not things that go outside of the box, but they will just make your life a lot easier. Again, these are the things that we're doing right now that makes our competing for contracts internationally a lot more simple. Why we do these things is because, for example, Dermot's based over in Ireland. I'm based over in the UK. We have other people based up in Northern Ireland, in Italy, down in South America, South Africa, for example. And we've set up a system where it is basically in the cloud or in a file sharing service of some sort to make sure that we have everything we all need at all times in order to submit a bid by a deadline, okay, and whether we can call upon that information as and when we need it. Now, one of the key things that most companies will try and do is they'll play down the importance of competing for these contracts, and they will then try and ask a junior person, and this doesn't mean the lowest ranked person in your organization, it's just meaning it's not the main person in the organization. Now, I'm not saying that the main person, or the CEO in this case, of the organization should lead a bid proposal, because sometimes that person might not be the best person to lead those proposals. You will have certain characteristics in order to put these bidding documents together, okay? And even within the Goose team, we were able to have a sort of a fun game yesterday where we looked at our strengths and weaknesses in terms of how we perform on the project. And again, within your teams as an SME, you will know the type of person that has the ability to gather vast amounts of information and condense it down into a document, essentially, that will be able to be presented to somebody on the outside. Again, that might be the most senior, and it could be a junior person, but do not think this job is a meaning, what's the word I'm looking for, a sort of a routine task, okay? Because this requires a lot of effort from somebody who knows your organization inside out. I think that's the key thing here. And we've already talked to you quite extensively about methodology, but one of the key things we do when we spot an opportunity, so for example, myself and Dermot spotted one just last night. We sent a message via WhatsApp to all our contacts where we think they might be of interest. And even tomorrow afternoon, once we finish the session, we will start a group think session with all of these consultants in all of their locations. One of them is out in Malaysia, the other one is out in Washington, DC, and we will talk about how we'll compete for this contract moving forward. We've set up document sharing tools. Again, I think COVID has allowed us all to push forward with the ways that we're working online, and we already had that system in place over the last 5 years. So again, have that in place. If you don't, seek support in how you can get those tools up and running. And the other thing that we've done as well is also produce this bid library. Now we have lots and lots of case studies that we can call upon at any time. So whether we're competing for a reformation type project or an economic development type project, we have essentially a bank of documents, if you like, that we can look at, call upon, and submit into a proposal very, very quickly. Now our bid library also contains CVs of our experts. This would be myself, Dermot, and the other members of our staff, and also the consultants that we regularly in touch with in order to put these together. If you are not doing these 4 things, I'd encourage you to do that. Sorry, Dermot.
Gary, yeah, could I just come in here, just one comment, and that is that these are essential things to do, absolutely essential. So if there's anyone in your organization who wants to be sending around drafts of a bid by email, you just have to stop doing that. It is so inefficient. It leads to mistakes and frustrates the group of people who are writing the bid together. So you have to use a document sharing tool. Once I used it, I never went back. You only want one version of the document existing at all times, not multiple versions with track changes and everything else. That's the 20th century. We now have to be much more effective and efficient, and we're also busier. This is why you must use document sharing tools. The group think session, that's brainstorming. Get the bid team into the room, even if it's only 3 people, and decide who's going to take responsibility for each part of the bid, and then set a deadline for when everyone's going to come back with their first draft. And of course, the first draft is going to be in the document sharing tool, so we can all see in real time what progress each person is making, and we can maybe help them, or we can get additional help for them from someone else in your organization. A bid library, vital. That's where you put all your old bids, your client testimonials, where you can find them. Often you will be wasting time if you're trying to find old tenders on your computer somewhere, and it becomes frustrating. So these are simple tips that can make your bid preparations much more successful. Gary.
Yeah. Do you want to keep going on this slide? Yes, and I'll take the next one?
Yes, because I love tip 1. Never, you see it's in big letters there, never ask the bid evaluator to look at a website or an annex for further information. Don't do it. Put the information into the bid where it's supposed to be, because the marks for that section will only be awarded for what's written in that section. So never refer someone to an annex and say, if you want to see further, go to the annex. No. The annex at the end of your bid may be for adding certain documents you were asked to show. It might be for putting in the text of a case study, but never be cross-referring someone to an annex. And never ask an evaluator to look at a website. So a typical example would be, I've seen in other companies' bids when we've been asked to review them, it's where the tender writer says, if you want to see everybody's CV or their profile, go to our company website. No. The bid evaluator is only going to evaluate what they see on the page. And so there, the CVs haven't been provided. The bio profiles haven't been provided. 0 marks. Okay, that's tip 1. Tip 2, if you go back to the days when you did exams, as a general rule, put most of your effort into the part of the bid that carries the highest portion of the marks. So for example, if the bid gives 30% to the methodology, you need to put a lot of work into that. There's no point writing a great background to the company if there's no marks for it, or if there's only 5 marks. You want to do good enough in all parts of the bid so that you meet the minimum acceptable level of criteria for passing each section, and then hopefully gather as many marks after that, but generally put most effort into the part of the bid where most of the marks lie. Now, tip 3 is an interesting one. A lot of companies now, for example, in the UK, but also in Europe, are wanting to see how the winning bidder is going to carry forward social values, or it might be green values, or it might be sustainability values. Well, you need to maybe do a little bit of research on that, and Goose's fact sheets can help you, because outside of the European Union now, we're increasingly seeing how, for example, female empowerment or gender equality is being pushed through in certain developing countries through public procurement. And so you need to be familiar with this when you go about putting your bids together, and the Goose fact sheets will be very helpful to help you doing that. Okay, Gary.
Future advice part 2. So answer every bid question in full, even if you agree.
Okay, I think we've lost Gary there for a moment. I'm just going to, can you hear me, everyone? Yeah. So tip 4 is answer every bid question in full, even if it means repeating information presented earlier in your bid. Okay, so don't say, I already answered that question. Yeah, Gary, I just took over there for tip 4. So I'll just finish it, and then if you're back with us, you can continue in tip 5. So just to finish tip 4, answer every question in full, even though you may be repeating information you've given in an earlier answer. This is because often the way the tenders are put together, they're put together poorly sometimes, or they have questions that duplicate. Unfortunately, as bidders, we have to live with that and accept it. So answer each question in full. Do not refer the evaluator to an earlier answer, because what you will do there is you will have effectively not answered the question the second time. Okay, Gary, are you back with us? Gary, are you back? Okay, I'll continue. So, tip now. 5. Speak again. Okay, I'm going to continue until you rejoin us. So,
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah, try talking.
Okay.
Okay, I'll continue.
Yeah, I don't know with the internet on my side.
If you can hear me, I will wave at you when I want you to go on to the next slide, okay? So
yeah.
Ask a third party to review the contents of your draft bid prior to submission. What we're saying here to you is always have another pair of eyes. Someone who hasn't been involved in the bid preparation at all in the company, ask them to read a good quality draft, and they might spot something that's totally unclear or not coming across well in your bid. So always ask a fresh pair of eyes to give you some feedback. And then tip 6, remember your bid is telling a story. That's what every bid is. Every tender is an invitation by the buyer for you, the bidder, to tell them a story in your bid. Okay? So make your bid a compelling story, one that the evaluator wants to read, so that they pick you out as the best and fittest company to do the job that they require someone to do for them. And so that means that the language of the tender should not cause any questions to arise in the mind of the evaluator. And that's why it's a great idea to ask another third party to review the bid for you. Okay, Gary, if you can hear me, next slide. Great.
Has it moved?
Yes, it has. Thank you. Good. So what Goose can do, what Goose can do for your company? What can Goose do for your company? So, Gary, you want to take the first one?
No, keep going. My internet, hopefully by the next one, I'll not stutter so much. So that's keep going.
That's fine. So look at this list now, everyone. There's 8 things Goose can do to help you, and these are all practical, and you won't get these anywhere else as a collection. Okay, so this is why I encourage all the companies here today to register with the portal and stay involved, because you will find you'll come back to the portal time and again for these practical resources. So the first thing is tender tracking. That is finding opportunities in the 6 target countries: Colombia, Chile, Vietnam, China, Serbia, and Norway. Okay, now there are other tender tracking services out there, and one of the problems with them is they just have thousands of tenders on them and you become overwhelmed with them. We have the words tailor-made in item number 1. The tender tracking is only coming from these 6 countries, and the number of tenders there is not going to be massive. So you can look at it very quickly, and if there's nothing there for you, you go on with the rest of your day's work and come back to it another day. So the opportunities are going to be identified through the Goose partners' offices in the 6 countries. So this is why it will be a manageable number of tenders for you to inspect whenever you look at the website. So it's a tailor-made tender tracking service. So it's a bit different from other tender tracking services. Secondly, there's the Goose web portal, and that's going to have a very large amount of resources available to you. And I'm going to talk about some of them now. They'd only be found on the Goose portal. So firstly, if you look at 3, there's insightful country fact sheets. Now, the word insightful is important because it's not just bare facts without context. There is a context put on the business intelligence information that's provided in the fact sheets. So you will find them very useful as your starting point when you're putting your first tender together for, let's say, the Colombia market, right, or the Vietnamese market. You will find a lot of useful information in the fact sheets. And these fact sheets are going to be updated for the next 2.5 or 3 years while the Goose project rolls on. So these fact sheets will be dynamic documents, and so will continue. They won't go out of date. They'll be continually kept up to date, and more facts added that are relevant to public procurement in the target markets. There will be country-specific webinars about how do you do business in these other countries, what's all the soft information you need to know. And there will also be specific webinars on the 4 target areas of green economy, smart cities, smart health, and ICT. And the 5th thing Goose is going to do for you is, and this is, I think, so fantastic, Goose are going to find companies in the 6 target countries and find out who wants to work with a European company for mounting joint bids. This will solve a massive headache for European companies who often want to bid for a foreign opportunity, but they can't find a local partner on time. This will help you. There will be matchmaking events, and also Goose has a budget. It's not a huge one, but it's a budget nonetheless, where it can provide mentoring vouchers so you can get the services of a consultant to help you either with some parts of a bid or to find out more about the market in a particular country. And then finally, it will show you how to write a good client reference. So many resources on this site. So I hope that you found this useful. Gary, did we want to show them one more slide? I'm going to let everyone reflect on this as we move off for coffee. This is, what can your company do for Goose? So you can look out for opportunities in the Goose target countries, and you might find another European company through Goose that wants to go into the bid jointly with you, right? It will help you also to stay in touch with your immediate business support organization. It will help prepare you to lead international opportunities, that is international bids, and it will better prepare you to partner with another company in the target country, or maybe another European company as well. There could be 3 of you in the bid, so that you partner successfully. So I hope you found this presentation from Gary and myself from Help Us Trade, who are external consultants to the Goose project, useful, and we're looking forward to meeting some of you in the dedicated meeting rooms, which we're now going to start moving off to after the coffee break. Victor, would you like to say something? Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dermot and Gary, for bringing some light to the room. Just before we go, some practical information. I hope you're seeing my screen. We will now split. I mean, during the coffee break, we will split in 4 rooms. So once you are back, you will be in your room. Please, if any of you feel that it's in the wrong room, just let us know, and we will move you to the proper room. Yeah, just send a message in the chat in every room, and we will take care of this. You will see that there's a leader of this in each one of the rooms. There's going to be each one partner of the project. So our colleagues from Estonia will lead the ICT roundtable. Smart Health will be assisted by our colleagues from Help Us Trade. Our colleagues from Flanders are leading the Green Economy Roundtable, and we, Axio, will lead the Smart City table. We will use your feedback. So some of the attendees have sent us your feedback. So we'll use your feedback to launch the discussion. Sorry about that. And please feel free to comment anything, and all opinions are valuable, and all opinions are welcome. Again, there were some questions in the chat. Everything will be available in our website. It's projectgoose.eu. You are more than invited to have a look at the web page to register yourself, and to have access at all the valuable information that you will find in our website. That's it. We'll meet you in 10 minutes at 10 to 11. Yeah, or yeah. Okay, then at 11 o'clock. Sorry. And as I said, you don't need to do anything. You will be automatically sent to the proper room, unless you want to change. And then 45 minutes later, you will be sent back to the main room for the wrap up. So that's it for now. We'll meet you in 10 minutes. Digue-li si ho vol fer des d'allà. Digue-li si ho vol fer des d'allà. Okay, I think we are all back again. Thank you very much for the patience. Professor, if you want to start with a wrap up, and then each round table will jump in to share the main conclusions on each table. You're muted, Dermot. You're muted. We can.
We cannot hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Okay, we have the professor coming, so he will start with the wrap up.
Okay, so very interesting discussion we had there on smart health. I'm just going to give kind of some of the interesting observations that came from that room. We just do 2 or 3 minutes per room, so I'm going to call on the rapporteur from the other 3 rooms in a moment. So we learned very interesting things about doing business in Japan. We had an Estonian cadre from an Estonian health science company who found that if you were a lady in Japan, you were invited to a very nice lunch, but they didn't really want you at the business dinner in the evening. And she's in a company where the CEO and the chief scientific officer are both female. So this was, you know, something they really needed to research in advance before they went to Japan and find out how to overcome that obstacle. We had Antonio, who is dealing with a company, or he's coming from a company, again, that's selling healthcare solutions for medical labs, who found that when he went to the Saudi Arabian market, I know it's not a Goose country, it took him 9 years to get his first contract. And I suppose if you'd said to Antonio, it's going to take you 9 years to get your first contract, he probably would never have gone there. So one of the interesting things he learned, very interesting advice, he said, you have to really find out at a very early stage if the buyer is prepared to pay the price you will want to charge for your product or service if you eventually win a tender, because he thought that in Saudi Arabia the money would be no object, but he found he was dealing with buyers who actually didn't have the money and they wanted to pay a rock bottom price for the products. And there he was putting in a lot of effort for many years into building a relationship and, you know, doing tenders and all of that. And yet at the end of the day, his client really wanted to pare him down to the actual bone. Now he's going to Chile, and he's definitely advocated that it's very beneficial finding a local partner, and has had successful local partners in other countries. But he's definitely recognizing how important it is to have a local partner. And so, as I was saying to everyone earlier, Goose will find local partners in the 4 target areas, you know, smart health, smart cities, ICT, green economy. So if you're thinking of going to a country, Goose will already have lined up a number of companies who are interested in working with European companies, and that's a real benefit from Goose. So I encourage people to register with Goose. One last thing, we had Sim, who's with a Serbian company, and he has found that he's just entering that, sorry, he's not from a Serbian company, he's from a European company, but they want to do business in Serbia. And he has found, he still hasn't got to the stage of tendering, but he has found dealing with the people down there very good, very professional, Why? Of course, there's a lot of cultural affinity, European values and way of thinking. So all that's going easy. But then I said to him, have you looked into the legal obstacles that might come with doing business in Serbia? They're outside the EU. They're going to be outside the EU for some time. Are there going to be trade and tariff barriers? So he's going to have to go and, you know, and licensing issues. He's going to have to look into that. And I know that we in Help Us Trade have recently been appointed to a big European Investment Bank framework to do procurement auditing, not just in Europe, but outside of Europe on EIB projects. And one of the things that we're learning is that in countries like Serbia, often, and Sim said this, you know, was interesting to hear, that often decision making could take quite a long time. So, and he's found that, you know, the things move at a different pace there as well. So I think they're all interesting perspectives on those countries. One other speaker in our group said they're looking at going to Vietnam, but they're maybe going to look at Malaysia first to find out if it's culturally similar. They're in fact quite different. So I don't think you'll learn much in Malaysia that will be of benefit in Vietnam. And one last tip we had, really loved this one from Antonio. He said that he has 4 business cards. He has an American one, because I think his parent company is American. He has a British one, because they have an operation there. He has a Belgian one, and one from Spanish, I think he has. And he said it's important to use the right business card in the appropriate country. So the Belgian business card may be very welcome in some countries, but not in others. The same with the American one or the Spanish one, etc. Okay, Victor, will I turn to you now for the smart cities room? Yeah. Are you green economy?
No, I was smart cities.
Great.
We have a nice discussion, and just to summarize, I would say the 3 main things was we were talking about the language and cultural issues. I think we all agree that what we are European SMEs, and we are facing different cultures and different languages. Even though for us we speak Spanish, but actually it's not about the language. It's about how you say and how they understand things in Colombia or in Chile. So it's not that easy or as easy as it may seem. Yeah, another one that was country regulation. So there's an issue depending on your product and service. You have to pay attention to country regulations. And I would say that the third big issue. I mean, there were few tips, but it can all be gathered under the necessity or the importance of the local partner. You need to understand the market. You need to know your competitors here and there. And then you need to get the contracting authorities to know your product or your services, and that's why having a local partner is already difficult. Having a reliable one, I think it's even more difficult. It's when you can scream eureka if you find a reliable local partner. But I would say that these are the 3 main issues we discussed: language and cultural barriers, country regulations, and finding a local partner. I give the floor to Piret. I think you were in the ICT table, so the floor is yours, Piret.
I will actually say the wrap up from yeah. So the main findings from ICT room was that the companies are really interested also to have the request for information alerts. So not only the request for proposals, but the earlier alerts about the initial phase. And what we also discussed and what the company said in our room was that they are also willing to team up with European SMEs to bid in the third country. So that's also, I think, one good point, that not only to team up with a local partner in the third country, but also to team up with the SMEs in Europe. And another, the third point was that while companies are aware of the EU tenders here in Europe, they are not really aware of the international tenders, and that's where I think Goose can really help, is to make you aware of all the tenders that are outside of EU. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Merit, sorry. And then I'll give the floor to Johan. I think you were on the green economy table. So Johan, the floor is yours.
I'm very sorry, my mic was off. So there I go again. So I'm the third in a row. So I will have to repeat some of the things that have already been said, I feel. Of course, high administrative burden, complexity of the procedures. That is something that we encounter in all the countries. Might be even in closer countries such as Serbia. Language is a problem, well, especially, well, we had an example of India where the administrative burden is very high and the procedures are very complex, but where okay, the fact that they use English there in their procurement is, of course, a small advantage, so it can be a positive experience too. But in most of the other countries, the opportunities are in local language. Sometimes you have an overview in English, but when you want to dig into further documentation, you have to turn to the local language in your personal contexts, which are very important, as we already said before. Often you have to talk the language of the procurement people that you encounter, or the people at the ministry that wish to implement the project and buy the equipment or the products or the services. And sometimes even registration processes are in the local language, and that is a burden to take. Yes. Local preferences is, of course, a problem. Sometimes local people have more knowledge. Someone said there's often a lack of information, and I was at first sight I was a bit surprised, because mostly you have loads of documents going with a tender, but of course it depends on what kind of information you're talking about. Maybe the information that matters there, of course, local companies may have an advantage. Someone said we are too specialized, and therefore it is difficult to enter into the market because our product is so precise and only to be used in one case, that is a problem. And then, of course, procurement officers abroad do not always know that special product, and they will not put it in terms of reference. Someone talked about maintenance. He said it is difficult for us to enter the market because we have to put the maintenance in our price, and maybe others do not do that, and therefore our price goes up. Well, my personal reaction was a bit that, of course, local companies that are close to the procurement office or to the ministry or the agency, that it's easier for local companies, and that, as a matter of fact, that is a bit a form of protection. It's a little bit like a local preference, because if maintenance is needed, well, a company will be chosen that is close to the place where the project is implemented. To search for a local partner. So I said again that we will use our offices abroad to find local partners for you. We have the EEN network, and we have our special databases we can use to find those local partners. That's about it.
Okay, Johan, thank you very much. I think we are already on time, but just before we finish, just let me, sorry. let me share with you a few more slides just to see what do we expect from those companies joining Goose. It's not that we expect, but it's something that we think you should take into account when joining Goose. We would like to have companies that are ambitious at the height of the challenges. A challenge that means to tender abroad or to tender in foreign markets. We are sure that you all have good products and services to be competitive internationally. So it's not an expectation. I think it's a reality. You should be persevering and patient because results may take some time to realize. So it's not a short-term competition. It's more in the maybe medium or long term. Obviously, you should have capacity to learn from your mistakes and from the best practices. And it would be nice to have companies who are able to compete and to cooperate, so to co-compete, which is a nice word. And what we'll be offering to you, or what will we offering to the companies joining Goose? A tailor-made tender tracking system to disseminate alerts on news and tenders in the 6 countries we already talked about and the 4 sectors. A nice web portal, again, projectgoose.eu. You see it here. You can see it. I think it's above my head, but we encourage you to visit and to register. You will find there a lot of practical information for both SMEs and institutions who want to bid internationally. More information you will find there, and then we will issue country fact sheets with the most relevant information on every market, gathered by our local business intelligence operatives in each country. We will be doing some both country and sector specific webinars to map the business opportunities in the 6 countries and the 4 target countries. 4 target sectors. We will, as we already said, we will identify local partners so you can join them and you can bid together. Again, we will organize matchmaking events both with local partners and local public buyers. We will offer you mentoring vouchers so you can to give you advice on specific tenders, on setting B2B meetings and helping you to draft bid documents and so on. And again, as Professor Cahill said, show you why customer reference are so important. Again, before saying goodbye, once again, visit our website, projectgoose.eu. It's already available for all those companies interested in our project. I will encourage you to register there and to enjoy all the information you will find there available for you. And yeah, we've come to the end. Yeah, obviously I'm here reminded that it's free. Obviously, it's all the information there it's free of charge for you. You just have to register, which is nothing. And that's it. It's the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your comments and your suggestions and your valuable opinions. And we hope to see you in the upcoming months and joining Goose and doing activities together. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Oh, wait, I still.
Oh, it's questions. Now, how much does it cost to be part of the? Yeah. No, it depends. Yeah, because I see a lot of people saying.
Said it yesterday to stipulate that it's free of service, it's free of charge.
Yeah.
So it's not,
for us, it's obvious.